This video is going to teach you a minimum of 3 things. How to win on turn 1 when you go first, how to win on turn 1 when you go second, and a little bit about carcinization, an evolutionary phenomenon in which different, unrelated species independently evolve to become crab-like. Trust me, this is important. This is one of the most famous examples of convergent evolution, a concept which is actually represented within the Pokémon video games. In the case of both Wiglet and Toedscool, although they are completely unrelated to their Kanto counterparts, Diglett and Tentacool, as a direct result of environmental pressures and a necessity to adapt, they have each developed distinctly similar characteristics. If this is something that is so prevalent in reality and is even depicted within the designs of certain Pokémon, perhaps something comparable to this concept may exist within the competitive Pokémon trading card games meta. I want you to hold on to that thought while I tell you about the most recent deck that I've been building. Last month, I made a video about how incredible it is to donk your opponent with the combination of Wellspring Ogerpon, Double Turbo Energy, and Sparkling Crystal. You should totally check it out after this video if you haven't already. Now, I was having so much fun with this that I wanted to build a deck that fully leaned into doing this every single game. So what would these 60 cards look like? All we need for the combo is Ball Search for Ogerpon, a way to switch it into the active, and a Double Turbo Energy and Sparkling Crystal to power it up. Obviously, we have to start with Wellspring Ogerpon EX and their best mate, Sparkling Crystal. Since we're trying to maximize our odds of hitting this dream turn 1, we'll absolutely need all 4 Double Turbo Energy to give us the best chance of naturally drawing one. When it comes to supporters, I reckon Arven is the most efficient option, so we've got 4 of them. You'll almost always need some kind of tool search for the crystal, and getting an item for free on top of that is just icing on the cake. And we've got so many choices for what that free item could be. One of our 4 Nest Ball or 4 Ultra Ball if we just need a way to search out Ogerpon, or even a Hisuian Heavy Ball if that fella's chilling out in the prizes. If we're missing a way to move into the active, then it could be a switch card. We're playing 3 since we don't always want to have to search for it. Plus, if we already have the Sparkling Crystal in hand, then Arven's tool could instead be a rescue board, which also helps with getting Ogerpon into the active. The last item we may want to grab off of Arven for the combo is Energy Lotto. The fact that it won't guarantee the Double Turbo Energy is pretty unfortunate, but it's great to have the option just in case we're feeling lucky and want to roll the dice on finding that final piece if we already have everything else. But there's no chance I'm playing this without at least one way to search out special energy. The best option for this is Chorus's Tenacity. It allows us to find a Double Turbo Energy and a Stadium. So if we add in 2 town stores which can subsequently search out Sparkling Crystal, suddenly Chorus's Tenacity becomes our one-stop shop for grabbing everything we need to power up Ogerpon. With such a situationally powerful one-of supporter card, Lumineon V slots in perfectly, and we're already running 4 Ultra Ball to enable it. If we're going to be playing a V Pokemon and this much tool search, you'd be crazy not to throw in a Forest Sealstone. There are so many times where it saved me from whiffing that final piece of Exodia. That's it for all the search and combo pieces, but there is zero chance that we're playing a deck that is so focused on turn 1 aggression without a Squawkabilly EX. And I'm even considering including a second one just to make sure that I'm ripping Squawkin' Seas every single game. It'd legitimately be a crime to leave out 4 copies of Trekking Shoes. They're going to help us turbo through the deck and find those combo pieces even faster. We're already at 34 cards directly supporting the combo. That's more than half the deck. Now, we haven't added anything to act as a fallback plan in the rare case of a game lasting more than a single turn. Cards like Pheasantipity EX for additional draw if something gets knocked out, Blood Moon Ursaluna EX to hit 220 with a Double Turbo Energy if they ever manage to take 3 prizes, and 240 to close out games if by some miracle our opponent ever gets down to their final prize. Plus, a couple of night stretches to recycle these guys. This will provide us with at least some hope in endgame scenarios, and for the same reasons, it's also worth including some classic staple supporters like a few Boss's Orders and an Iono. 18 slots left in the deck, and I think it's finally time to address the elephant in the room. Contrary to the world that I'd like to live in, there are in fact decks that exist which are almost entirely comprised of big, beefy 2-prize fellas. I know, it's a tragedy. If we want to try taking this deck anywhere beyond the ladder, it's a glaring weakness that these last 18 cards are really going to need to patch out. But if you were to look beyond this obvious Achilles heel, you might notice something else about this list. It's suspiciously crab-shaped. Let's compare what we have so far to the highest placing recent Clorf list, which got 3rd at the Joinville Regionals. There are so many similarities. In fact, the only cards unique to our deck so far are a couple extra Trekking Shoes and of course the Wellspring Ogerpon EX and Sparkling Crystal. Much like the many crustaceans who inhabit the world that we live in, whose species have undergone carcinization, this deck, which began life as nothing more than a Wellspring Ogerpon, a few Double Turbo Energies and a Sparkling Crystal, has independently developed the distinct characteristics of a crab. In this case, Cloth. Because the two decks share an identical shell, it's possible to take any stock standard Cloth deck, swap out the A-Spec for Sparkling Crystal and a single other card for the Wellspring Ogerpon, and what you'll be left with is a masterpiece which perfectly facilitates a consistent turn 1 attack from Ogerpon almost every single game. With the profound knowledge that Carcinisation does in fact exist within the Pokemon trading card game, we can now fill in the final cards of this deck list, allowing it to complete its evolutionary journey and achieve its final crab-like form. But first, regardless of whether or not you are a crab, are becoming a crab, or are completely opposed to your own personal Carcinisation, I'd appreciate it if you supported the channel by subscribing. Let's quickly finish off the list with 3 Cloth to act as the main attacker when we can't abuse Wellspring Ogerpon, and 2 Brute Bonnet to unhinge Cloth's scissors, an Artisan for a bit of extra search, and another Stadium that we can grab off of Chorus Tenacity if we don't need Town Store, 3 Binding Mochis to boost our poisoned Pokemon's damage, and 3 Ancient Booster Energy Capsules to enable Brute Bonnet's Toxic Powder ability, Radiant Hisuian Sneasler to help us hit specific damage thresholds with our poison. Hisuian Electrode V is here because it has a great attack for 0 energy and hits a nice relevant grass weakness. When you throw on some super effective glasses, this guy is one-shotting Roaring Moon and dealing 300 damage to Charizard, which is exactly enough for the Radiant Hisuian Sneasler boosted poison damage to finish them off. Jet Energy has some nice flexibility as a non-item based switching option and can enable some spicy plays with Wellspring Ogerpon's Sob without needing Sparkling Crystal, as well as the full 240 damage from Ursaluna even when they have 2 prizes remaining. A Carmine to give us some extra draw on turn 1 going first. But why would we need that? Aren't we all about going second? It's because of this beautiful Pecharunt. This fella is the star of the deck when we're going first. They give us the potential to win games before our opponent can make a single action. This perfectly complements the most fun part of the deck, which is winning games before your opponent can do anything. Regardless of if they pick first or second, now they're never safe. But this is so much more than just slapping a funny combo onto a pre-existing Cloth deck. Yeah, the turn 1 attack is great, and it's cool that Cloth gets a spread option to help deal with 1 prize board states, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is some insane synergy between poisoning your opponent's active Pokemon and then locking them down with Sob. And with the way that the deck is built, you can construct some seriously spicy maths. Sob can hit for 0 with a double turbo energy attached, 20 damage with a Jet Energy or Sparkling Crystal, and then either 40 or 60 if you throw on a Binding Mochi, plus the 10 damage from poison, or 30 if you have Radiant Hisuian Sneasler in play. These aren't particularly impressive numbers though, are they? You're barely knocking out a Charmander. Well, in this case, it's not about how hard you hit, but the flexibility and utility of the attack. There are actually a whole bunch of situations where you want to hit for more or less damage in order to line up precise numbers. Here's an easy example. Say we're down after a slow start and need to take 4 prizes without our opponent taking a single one. That's a massive comeback. Normally with a deck like Cloth, you just scoop it up and go next. But our opponent has a Squawkabilly in play, because of course they do. That card's great. If we boss it up and use Sob for 20 in combination with Brute Bonnet's Poison and Radiant Hisuian Sneasler, that's 50 damage. And they don't have a switching card to get out of the active. They pass back to our turn and take another 30. Squawkabilly is up to 80 damage. Sob again for 20 plus another 30 from poison, and we're up to 130. And if they whiff the switching out again, it'll be knocked out coming back into our turn. This denies them the opportunity to take a return KO, functionally providing us with back-to-back turns and a sneaky line to take in an otherwise unwinnable game. Even if you can't line things up perfectly to take the KO coming back into your turn, ensuring that the knockout is caused by poison damage already has some benefits on its own. Because poison damage happens between turns, you shut down Fezandipity EX's effect and deny Unfair Stamp. Poison damage also gets around the effect of Legacy Energy. I could easily talk for another hour about all of the different damage combinations and ways that you can steal games from your opponent with this insane combo, but I want you to keep watching the video, so I'm not going to do that. But I do have one last thing that I want to bring up relating to Sob. It's pretty obvious, but if your opponent is out of switching cards and has less cards in deck than you can just attach a DTE and Sob for 0 damage on something that can't attack you back, like Lumineon, Manaphy, or Radiant Greninja in certain decks, until they just deck out and you win. Alright, let's move on to the next layer of the iceberg. Right now, according to Limitless stats for real-life tournaments, 38% of Cloth decks that made Day 2 are already including Collapse Stadium. Although the Crab only gives up a single prize, you're often reliant on using 2 prize Pokemon to set up, such as Squawkabilly EX, Fezandipity EX, and Lumineon V. These liabilities will often end up sitting on your bench as little 2 prize treats for your opponent to pick off and accelerate their win condition. Collapse Stadium offers the utility to not only limit your opponent's bench, but also potentially remove one of your own benched Pokemon, which can often leave you with just 1 prizes in play. But you know what's even better than this? Removing 3 useless Pokemon from your bench. If your opponent happens to have Area 0 Underdepths in play, benching Wellspring Ogerpon EX will also give you access to that expanded bench. You can easily fill up your bench with 5 one-prize Pokemon and then remove the stadium to clear out all the liabilities, including Ogerpon, or just leave it up and enjoy the luxury of 8 bench spaces. Since the list already has 3 stadiums and Colress's Tenacity, you'll never have any trouble finding a stadium bump. Granted, this isn't a one-to-one replacement for Collapse Stadium, as it does depend on your opponent playing down the Area 0, but it is a relatively common card within the current meta and is vital to the strategy of the decks that do play it. Every single Terapagos deck, Miraidon, many Palkia builds, and even some Raging Bolts. Plus, it's just another surprising synergy that Wellspring Ogerpon has with Cloth. At the end of the day, despite the variety of interesting use cases, we are mainly just playing Ogerpon for that huge torrential pump attack, and it perfectly complements Cloth as an attacking partner. The Crab is excellent when it comes to uptrading into those big basic decks like Raging Bolt, Miraidon, and Roaring Moon. You can easily hit 240 damage while only using single prize Pokemon, letting you get ahead in the prize race. On the flip side, hitting big numbers into whatever is sitting in front of you won't help all that much when you're facing something slower like Dragapult or Gardevoir. This is where Wellspring Ogerpon comes in. It allows you to still take multi-prize turns when faced with single prize board states, and in many instances completely shut down your opponent's setup by targeting down their key evolving Pokemon. Couple this with Petron opening up the opportunity for devastating first turns regardless of if you're going first or second, and you have an incredibly fun deck that more people seriously need to try out. And if all of that wasn't convincing enough for you, I want you to think about what the big bad card of next format is going to be. Pikachu EX. Cloth is the perfect counter to this new menace. Not only are you hitting it for weakness, guaranteeing that you'll get the knockout without any other modifiers, but in this case, Pikachu's ability will actually help you. By leaving it alive at exactly 10 HP, regardless of how hard you hit it, you can be sure that it will be KO'd by the effect of poison and not the actual attack, which, like I mentioned before, is exactly what you want to be doing. Anyway, I really do appreciate you making it all the way to the end of the video. Let me know down in the comments if you're more excited to donk your opponent with a Petron when you're going first, or with Wellspring Ogerpon EX when you're going second. I'll catch you in the next one.